My MIL gave me a 6 out of 10 as a wife in a secret group chat. My husband's response made me pack my bags. I've been married to Kevin for 3 years and together for 5. His mother, Linda, has never been warm toward me, but I assumed she was just one of those reserved women who takes time to open up. I tried everything to win her over. I cooked for family dinners, remembered every birthday, helped plan her anniversary party last year down to the napkin colors. Can you imagine spending 3 years of your life trying to please people, only to discover they were secretly rating you like a product on a shelf? And what if the person you loved most, your husband, was right there with them, giving a thumbs up when his mother mocked your deepest pain? Linda, Kevin's mom, always had this smile, polite, almost saccharine. She'd thank me for dinner or a gift, but then, without fail, she'd find something to pick apart. The turkey was a little dry. The gift wrap could have been neater. I tried to brush it off. Kevin would always say, "Oh, Mom's just particular. Don't take it personally." And I believed him. Why wouldn't I? I had no reason to think otherwise. But then, last Saturday, everything changed. We were celebrating his dad's retirement, a big, happy family affair, so I thought. Halfway through the evening, Linda, still smiling, asked me to fetch her phone from the kitchen. She wanted to show off cruise photos. As I picked it up, the screen flashed with a notification. It was from a group chat, innocently named Family Updates. But the preview hit me like a slap to the face. It was from Kevin's aunt, and it read, "What's her score this week?" My heart dropped into my stomach. I knew, rationally, I shouldn't have looked. But a primal, screaming instinct in my gut told me to open that chat. And when I did, the sheer unimaginable horror of what I found made my hands tremble so violently I almost dropped the phone. It wasn't just a message. It was a spreadsheet. A real, honest-to-God, color-coded spreadsheet. My name was right there at the top, a target. Down the side, categories: cooking, cleaning, appearance, career, attitude, motherhood, potential. Each one had a score 1 to 10, and it was updated weekly by Linda, with detailed comments explaining every single rating. The most recent entry? From that very morning. She'd given me a 6 out of 10. Why? Because I wore jeans instead of a dress to the party. Because I brought store-bought cookies. Because I was too loud greeting people at the door. I scrolled up, my breath catching in my throat. 3 years. This thing had been going on for 3 years. 3 years of Linda dissecting my entire existence, like I was some kind of defective product. And it wasn't just her. Kevin's aunts and cousins were all in on it, chiming in with laughing emojis, adding their own cruel observations. One aunt wrote that I'd gained weight since the wedding. A cousin openly declared it was embarrassing that I made more money than Kevin. And his own sister wrote that Linda should have pushed harder for Kevin to marry his ex-girlfriend Rachel, because at least she came from a good family. My stomach lurched. I felt physically ill, the world spinning around me. But the true gut punch, the thing that shattered me, wasn't Linda. It wasn't the aunts or the cousins. It was Kevin, my husband. He was in that group chat. From the very beginning. I scrolled back, 3 agonizing years of messages flashing before my eyes. Not once, not a single time did he defend me. Not once did he tell them to stop. Then I saw it. The week of my miscarriage. Linda had rated me a 4 out of 10. Her comment, moping around, neglecting Kevin's needs. And Kevin's response? A single, casual thumbs-up emoji. A thumbs up. My own husband gave a thumbs up to his mother, mocking my grief over losing our baby. The betrayal was so immense it was physical. I felt like I couldn't breathe. I walked back into the living room, a ghost. Everyone was laughing, oblivious. Kevin sat there, arm draped casually over the couch, like nothing in the world was wrong. Linda, with her polite, predatory smile, was waiting for her phone. I handed it to her, my voice feeling strangely detached. I'm not feeling well, I said. I need to leave. Kevin barely glanced up. Okay, he mumbled. I'll catch a ride home with my brother. Just like that, I drove home, my mind a blur of rage and sorrow. I packed 3 suitcases, everything important, everything that was mine. I left my wedding ring on the kitchen counter, a silent, searing statement. He finally texted me 4 hours later, not asking if I was okay, not wondering where I went. Just, where'd you move the leftovers? He still had no idea, but he was about to, because before I left, I forwarded that entire horrific spreadsheet to the one person Linda spent her whole life trying to impress, Phoebe. She checks her email first thing every Sunday. So here I am, Sunday morning, in a sterile hotel room. My hands won't stop shaking, even though I'm the one who sent it. 3 years of ratings, of vicious comments, now sitting in Phoebe's inbox. There's no taking it back. I keep checking the clock, as if time can somehow rewind. The room is too quiet, yet too small. The coffee I ordered is cold. I can't drink it. Every time I close my eyes, I see that thumbs up. Kevin's thumbs up. Next to moping around during my miscarriage. It's burned into my retina. My phone is face down on the bed, a silent, menacing presence. I stare at it, half expecting it to just explode. Part of me, the old me, wants to call Phoebe to soften the blow, to explain. But a stronger, newer part knows the spreadsheet speaks for itself. It screams. I start pacing, a frantic rhythm between the window and the bathroom. I catch my reflection, but it's like looking at a stranger. Someone strong. Someone who actually stood up for herself, instead of constantly trying to appease people who were literally scoring her worth. Around 9 a.m., the buzzing starts. Numbers I don't recognize. Then Kevin's. Over and over. I silence it all. My stomach is a twisted knot. But I force myself to order room service. Scrambled eggs and toast. Something bland. Something I might actually keep down. The server, a kind-faced man, asks if I'm okay when I sign the receipt. I must look awful because he offers extra coffee without me even asking. I manage a few bites, the eggs like sawdust, the toast catching in my throat. But I eat. I have to. The calls keep coming, filling my screen with missed notifications. Kevin's name, then strangers, then Kevin again. Linda, no doubt, is using everyone else's phone to try and get through. Finally, I just turn my phone completely off. The silence is deafening, but it's a relief. I finish my breakfast alone. By noon, a staggering 47 missed calls. The voicemails were frantic. I turned my phone back on just long enough to see the count, and instantly regretted it. Linda's voice, shrill with panic, demanding to know what I'd done. Cecilia, one of Kevin's cousins, sounded genuinely terrified. And Kevin's messages were the worst. He just kept repeating, "We need to talk right now," as if this was just another silly argument we could smooth over. I deleted most of them, not even listening to the end. Their voices were making my chest so tight, I felt like I was suffocating. Miranda's message began with a half-hearted apology, but quickly pivoted to ordering me to fix this situation. Someone I didn't even recognize accused me of tearing the family apart. But I saved them all. Every single one. Some dark instinct told me I'd need proof of their panic later. My hands are shaking so hard I nearly dropped the phone trying to open the voicemails. Finally, I listened to one from Kevin. He sounded genuinely confused, almost annoyed. "Why did you leave?" he asked. "And where did you put my good work shirts?" He still didn't know about the spreadsheet. That meant the whole family was in a frantic scramble, trying to do damage control before he found out what I'd found out. His tone was the same one he used when I forgot his dry cleaning or moved his things. "Are you mad about something?" he asked casually. "We can talk when I get home from work." As if I was being dramatic over nothing. He ended the message asking if I remembered to pay the electric bill. I played it 3 times. 3 times I listened to his utter, infuriating lack of awareness. He had no idea his entire family had spent 3 years rating me, mocking me, and that he was an active participant. He had no clue I saw his thumbs up emoji. He truly thought I left because of some trivial disagreement he couldn't even name. The chasm between what he knew and what I knew felt like an unbridgeable canyon. Around 2 p.m., my phone rang again. A number I didn't recognize. It was Phoebe. Her voice was steady, calm, and incredibly kind. She said she'd received my email, and the first thing she asked was, "Are you somewhere safe?" That simple question, that genuine concern, it broke me. I started to cry hard. The first real tears since I'd walked out the door. I wasn't expecting worry. I was expecting anger, judgment. But not this. The sobs racked my body, making it impossible to breathe, let alone talk. She waited. Patiently. No calm-downs, no, it's okay. Just quiet, steady presence. When I could finally manage words, I told her I was at a hotel, physically okay. She asked if I needed anything, if I wanted company. Her sheer kindness, after 3 years of emotional starvation, shattered something inside me. All the tension, all the tightly held emotions since Saturday night just exploded. I cried for 20 minutes straight, and she stayed on the line, murmuring gentle, comforting words that made me feel less alone. Phoebe told me she'd known Linda for 40 years. She'd always suspected Linda had a cruel streak, but this spreadsheet, this was beyond anything she could have imagined. She explained that Linda had spent decades trying to impress her because Phoebe had married well and lived the life Linda always craved. And this email, this raw, undeniable truth, had utterly destroyed Linda's carefully constructed image. Phoebe's voice hardened as she recounted Linda's long history of one-upping other women at church events and social gatherings. The cutting remarks about other people's children, their marriages, always disguised as concern. The woman from their book club who stopped coming after Linda systematically tore her apart for months. Listening to Phoebe, a profound realization washed over me. Linda's treatment of me wasn't personal. It was never about me. It was just her pattern, her cruel, insidious pattern. Phoebe didn't stop there. She'd already forwarded my email to 3 other women in their social circle, people she felt deserved to know the real Linda. We talked for an hour, Phoebe sharing even more stories about Linda's history of tearing down women she felt threatened by. "You deserve so much better than this family," she said, and her words were like a bomb. It felt like the first genuine support I'd had in years. She gave me the name of her divorce attorney, assuring me not to worry about the cost. He owes me a favor. We started discussing practicalities, changing bank accounts, securing documents. I realized with a jolt that I'd left my birth certificate at the house. "Don't worry," Phoebe said, her voice firm. "We'll get it back safely when the time comes." She even shared stories from her own divorce 3 decades ago, how she'd rebuilt her life. By the time we hung up, the fear that had been paralyzing me had lessened, replaced instead by a quiet, steely determination. Kevin finally figured it out. He went home, found my wedding ring, and his texts instantly morphed from confused annoyance to blazing fury. "What kind of dramatic statement are you trying to make?" he demanded. "You're overreacting." This came through while I was still reeling from Phoebe's kindness. He called leaving my ring childish and manipulative. He wanted to know where I was, why I wasn't answering. "My mother is upset. You need to explain yourself." The texts escalated, each one more demanding, more accusatory. "You're embarrassing me in front of my family," he ranted. "You planned this whole thing to hurt me." He even asked what he was supposed to tell people when they asked where his wife was. Never once, not a single time, did he ask if I was okay, or why I left. So I sent him a screenshot, the spreadsheet, specifically the entry about my miscarriage, and his thumbs-up emoji. 3 dots appeared, and disappeared, for 20 agonizing minutes. Then his response, "We need to discuss this in person like adults." The sheer irony. He completely missed that his response was exactly the problem. I watched the dots appearing and vanishing, picturing him scrambling for words. When his next message finally came through, it was a cascade of deflection. The group chat was just my family being family, he wrote. You're taking it too seriously. He claimed he hadn't really read most of the messages, and that the thumbs up didn't mean anything. He insisted I was being too sensitive and needed to understand his mother's perspective. If you just come home, he pleaded, we can work through this misunderstanding together. Misunderstanding. That word. It made me want to hurl my phone across the room, shatter it against the wall. Monday morning, I called the divorce attorney Phoebe, recommended Lawrence Fowler. He squeezed me in for an afternoon appointment. Walking into his office felt utterly surreal. I never, in a million years, imagined my marriage ending like this. But there was no going back now. Not after what I'd found. His office was in one of those old, downtown houses, all creaky floors and dark wood. The receptionist offered water. I took it, just to have something to grip. The paperwork felt impossible. How could I condense 3 years of marriage into these tiny spaces? Lawrence called me back. He was younger than I expected, with kind eyes and a firm handshake. He just said, "Tell me everything." My voice shook as I started with Saturday night, the terror of finding Linda's phone. Then I handed him what I'd prepared, a printed copy of the spreadsheet. He put on his reading glasses and began to scroll, page by agonizing page. His jaw clenched tighter with every entry. 3 years of weekly ratings, color-coded, categorized. His finger traced down the columns, his expression darkening. He stopped. The week of my miscarriage. Linda's 4 out of 10. Her comment, moping around, neglecting Kevin's needs. And Kevin's thumbs-up emoji. Lawrence slowly took off his glasses, placing them on his desk. He looked at me, his eyes holding a mixture of anger and profound sadness. This, he said, his voice quiet but firm, this level of documented emotional abuse is significant. He emphasized how much worse Kevin's active participation made it, legally, especially given it continued through major life events like my miscarriage. He explained that in divorce proceedings, this wasn't just family drama. It was a pattern of emotional cruelty, meticulously documented, with dates and Kevin's own responses. Impossible to deny, impossible to minimize. Finally, someone, a legal professional, was confirming it. What happened to me was abuse, not just some misunderstanding or family being family. For the next hour, we went through my options. Lawrence spoke to me, not at me, explaining everything in clear, understandable terms. He confirmed I had a strong case for keeping the house. My name was on the deed, and my bank statements proved I'd paid nearly 70% of the mortgage over the last 3 years, while Kevin spent his money on other things. The constant, harassing calls and messages from his family? That was also valuable documentation of their toxic behavior, supporting my need for a clean break. Lawrence took meticulous notes as I described the group chat members, their relationships, the entire sick family dynamic that enabled this abuse. He asked about specific incidents from the spreadsheet, and I explained the context behind Linda's cruelest ratings. Like the week, she gave me a 3 because I got a promotion that paid more than Kevin's job. By the end, the fear was still there, but now I had a plan. A concrete, actionable plan. I authorized Lawrence to send Kevin a letter. I'd retained legal counsel. All future communication would go through my attorney. Signing that form, it was profoundly powerful. Like I was finally reclaiming myself after 3 years of desperate, futile attempts to please people who were literally scoring my worth as a human being. Lawrence assured me he'd send the letter via certified mail that day, so Kevin couldn't pretend he never got it. He also advised me to block Kevin's number. All contact from now on would be through him to prevent manipulation. I walked out of that office feeling a strength I hadn't known in weeks. Finally, someone was on my side. Finally, someone was fighting for me instead of against me. 2 hours later, my phone rang again. An unknown number. I answered without thinking. It was Arthur, another one of Kevin's relatives. He tried to sound reasonable, concerned. "Heard you left Kevin," he began. "Just want to understand what's going on." He peppered his speech with apparently you're upset. Apparently there was some family chat that bothered you. He then launched into a speech about how families have disagreements all the time, and this was something we should talk through, rather than me tearing everyone apart over what was probably just a silly joke taken the wrong way. His carefully chosen words screamed one thing: they'd coordinated. They decided to minimize everything. Call it a joke. A misunderstanding. I cut him off. "Arthur," I asked, my voice dangerously calm, "would you think it was a silly joke if your wife discovered your family had been rating her for 3 years with a color-coded spreadsheet, and you, her husband, had participated by reading and commenting?" The silence on the other end stretched. So long I thought he'd hung up. Then a mumbled excuse. "That's different. You're being dramatic." "No, Arthur," I said, "it's not different. It's exactly the same. And your reaction right now proves you all know what you did was wrong, but you just don't want to face the consequences." He started to argue. I hung up, and I immediately blocked his number. And then every other family member I could think of. My blocked list quickly grew to 17 people. Arthur must have reported back that I wouldn't listen to reason, because my email inbox exploded next. Messages flooded in from relatives I barely knew, some I'd never even met. Kevin's second cousin wrote a treatise on family is forever and how I needed to forgive and move forward for everyone's sake. An aunt I'd met once fleetingly at a wedding sent 3 paragraphs describing Linda's immense suffering. Kevin's uncle lectured me about embarrassing the whole family and insisted I handle things privately like a mature adult. Some feigned sympathy. "We understand you're hurt, but everyone makes mistakes." Others wielded guilt like a weapon. "This is affecting Kevin's parents' health and marriage." Every single one of them, without exception, wanted me to smooth things over, to make it all disappear, so they could return to their delusion of being a normal, functional family, instead of confronting the monstrosity they'd actually done. None of them grasped the fundamental truth. This wasn't about them. It wasn't about their comfort. This was about 3 years of meticulously documented cruelty, with my own husband as an active participant, while I, utterly clueless, desperately tried to earn approval I was never, ever going to get. Tuesday evening, Phoebe called. I answered immediately. She was one of the only people I actually wanted to hear from. She told me Linda had shown up at her house that afternoon in tears, begging Phoebe not to tell anyone else about the spreadsheet, claiming it was all a misunderstanding. Phoebe, in her calm, unwavering way, told Linda directly she'd already shared the information with several mutual friends, because, she stated, behavior like keeping a rating spreadsheet on your daughter-in-law doesn't deserve protection or privacy. Linda, Phoebe recounted, completely fell apart, crying about her destroyed reputation, convinced everyone would think she was a terrible person. "You are a terrible person for what you did to her," Phoebe had told her. Linda left, looking utterly destroyed, yet, tellingly, still not offering an actual apology or taking any real responsibility. Hearing about Linda's humiliation brought a complicated mix of feelings I wasn't prepared for. A part of me felt a fierce satisfaction, knowing she was finally experiencing consequences for her cruelty. The woman who'd spent 3 years making me feel inadequate was now facing judgment herself. But another, larger part just felt profoundly tired and sad for all the wasted energy. 3 years of cooking perfect dinners, remembering every birthday, planning every party. And none of it mattered, because Linda had already decided I wasn't good enough long before I even started trying. 3 days later, a thick envelope arrived at my hotel, certified mail. I knew, before even opening it, that Kevin had retained his own attorney. The letter was a dense block of legal jargon, but the gist was clear. I had abandoned our marriage without cause, and Kevin was demanding my immediate return to work on our relationship. His lawyer waxed poetic about marital obligations and good faith efforts at reconciliation, completely, glaringly ignoring the 3 years of documented abuse that actually drove me away. I scanned the letter, then emailed it to Lawrence. He called back within the hour, actually laughing. Kevin's attorney clearly has no idea about the spreadsheet yet, he chuckled. He's operating under Kevin's fairy tale version of events, where you just left for no reason. Lawrence sounded almost gleeful, explaining how utterly blindsided Kevin's lawyer was about to be when he saw the actual evidence. That very day, we sent back a response. Attached? The full, unredacted spreadsheet, along with a detailed outline of the emotional abuse I'd endured. Lawrence included specific examples, dates, Kevin's own messages documenting his participation, and the devastating impact on my mental health. The response was professional, yes, but absolutely devastating. It laid out in no uncertain terms exactly why I left and why I had zero intention of returning or reconciling. Lawrence was confident. Kevin's attorney would advise him to settle quickly and quietly. No lawyer wants their client's cruelty documented in permanent, public court records for all to see. I scheduled a locksmith for Thursday morning, knowing Kevin would be at work. The guy arrived promptly in his white van. I met him at the house, key in hand, and the deed clearly showing my name. He didn't ask questions, just got straight to work, drilling out the old hardware, installing fresh, unyielding deadbolts on both doors. 40 minutes, $200. A small price to pay for the knowledge that Kevin couldn't just waltz in anymore. I slipped a new key onto my keychain, a physical symbol of reclaiming what had always been mine. Walking through the house after the locksmith left felt strange. Everything looked the same, but it was profoundly different, like I was seeing it for the very first time. The blue couch, which Linda had deemed too modern. The kitchen curtains, chosen because Kevin's mom had once casually mentioned liking that pattern. The dining room table, purchased to match his parents'. Every single decision, every decorating choice, every piece of furniture. It all screamed my desperate, futile attempts to earn approval from people who were literally keeping score of my failures. Standing in the middle of that living room, a chilling realization washed over me. I didn't even know what I liked anymore. I had spent 3 years decorating for someone else's rating system. I started in the bedroom, pulling my clothes from the closet, carefully folding them into boxes. My jewelry box, the photos from my family, my laptop, important papers, my grandmother's quilt from the hall closet. These were the things that mattered. Kevin's things? I didn't touch a single item. This wasn't about spite or revenge. This was about gathering what was mine and getting out. His clothes remained in the closet, his toiletries in the bathroom, his books on the shelf. I wasn't trying to hurt him. I was simply protecting myself, beginning the arduous process of building a life that was finally, truly mine. It took about 2 hours to pack everything I cherished, 3 trips to load the boxes into my car. On my last walk through the quiet house, I paused in the kitchen, looking at the counter where I'd left my wedding ring. It was gone. Kevin must have picked it up, probably assuming I'd just forgotten it. I locked the door behind me with my new key, and I drove away. I didn't look back. Not once. Kevin showed up at the house around 6 p.m. I know this because Lawrence called me, openly laughing at the voicemail he'd just received. Kevin had tried his key in the front door, then the back. Neither worked. And apparently he'd completely lost it on the front porch. Lawrence played the message for me. Kevin, screaming, yelling about how I couldn't lock him out of his own house, how it was illegal, how he was calling the police. Lawrence was still chuckling when he reminded me, "He clearly forgot your name is the only one on the deed. You paid the entire down payment with money you saved before you even got married." That house is legally yours. You have every right to change those locks. The next morning, Lawrence filed the formal separation agreement at the courthouse. The official paperwork cited irreconcilable differences, a polite lie, but attached? A meticulously detailed account of Kevin's participation in 3 years of documented emotional abuse, all through that insidious family group chat. Lawrence mentioned the court clerk handling the filing, a woman named Sandra, apparently a church acquaintance of Linda's. Sandra's eyes, he said, went wide as saucers as she read through the spreadsheet. Lawrence could almost see her mentally composing the phone calls she was about to make. By that afternoon, my phone already had 3 messages from people I barely knew, all asking if I'm okay and all whispering about what Linda did. Word was spreading through their social circle like wildfire, faster than I could have ever imagined. Tuesday afternoon, a restricted number called. I answered without thinking. Big mistake. Linda's voice, a shaky, tearful mess, flooded my ear. She wailed about how I'd destroyed her family, turned everyone against her. People were calling her, asking questions. Women from church were giving her cold looks. I was cruel for sending that email to Phoebe when Linda had only ever tried to help me be a better wife. Her voice grew higher, more desperate, as I listened to her completely rewrite history right before my ears. I let her ramble for 2 minutes. Then I cut her off. "Linda," I asked, my voice flat, "do you honestly believe what you're saying?" A pause. Then she started sputtering. "Everything in the spreadsheet was constructive criticism," she insisted. "Meant to help you. I was trying to guide you into being the wife Kevin needed." As she spoke, a chilling realization hit me. She was so deeply entrenched in her own delusional reality, she genuinely couldn't see the truth. She'd convinced herself that rating me weekly, sharing those ratings with the entire family, was somehow an act of kindness. Documenting my failures was for my own good. "Linda," I said, my voice cutting through her self-pity. Giving me a 4 out of 10 during my miscarriage wasn't constructive. It was cruel. And Kevin's thumbs up on that post, that showed me exactly what my marriage truly was. No amount of rewriting history will ever change that. She started to argue, her voice turning defensive, but I hung up. I didn't owe her another second of my time, or my energy. I was done listening to her justify her cruelty. Wednesday morning, I woke to a long email from Kalani, Kevin's sister. I wasn't expecting it. She wrote that she'd seen the spreadsheet as part of the legal documents Kevin had shown the family, and seeing it all laid out like that, it made her realize how truly awful they all were. She was ashamed, she said, that she'd participated in something so mean and hurtful, that she'd gotten caught up in Linda's toxicity and hadn't stopped to think about how I would feel. Her apology seemed genuine. She even included specific examples of cruel things she'd said, things she now regretted. Reading it stirred complicated feelings. A part of me appreciated her taking responsibility, admitting she was wrong. But another part remembered her saying Kevin should have married Rachel, her active participation for 3 years without ever speaking up. Her apology felt real, but also too little, too late. I wasn't ready to forgive anyone from that family. I wasn't sure I ever would be. The damage was done. Saying sorry couldn't erase 3 years of documented cruelty. That afternoon, I wrote back, keeping my response short and clear. I thanked her for the apology, for taking responsibility. But I explained I needed space from everyone connected to Kevin. What his family did hurt too much. I wasn't ready to have any of them in my life while I was trying to heal and move forward. I hit send, and for the first time, felt okay about setting a boundary that protected me instead of prioritizing their comfort. Kalani responded within the hour. She got it, she said, expected nothing from me. And then, something surprising. She'd actually been in therapy, dealing with her own issues with Linda's controlling behavior, working through years of feeling like nothing she did was ever good enough. She wrote that maybe something good could come from this mess, if it helped her break free from patterns she didn't even know were hurting her. Reading that, it gave me a tiny flicker of hope. Maybe the spreadsheet, exploding into everyone's lives, would force some of them to actually look at how they'd been treating each other. It didn't fix what happened to me, but at least Kalani seemed to be waking up to her own situation. The next morning, a delivery person showed up at my hotel room door, holding the biggest, most extravagant flower arrangement I'd ever seen. Red roses, white lilies, bursting from a huge crystal vase that probably cost more than my weekly groceries. The card, clutched in my hand, read, "He loves me and we can work through anything." Signed, Kevin, with about 15 heart emojis. I stared at them, sitting there on the desk, and felt absolutely nothing. No, not nothing. Annoyance. Pure, unadulterated annoyance. This was exactly Kevin's MO. Something expensive, showy, designed to look good, but completely devoid of actual meaning or effort to address the real problem. He sent flowers, not an apology for participating in 3 years of documented cruelty. He truly believed roses and a generic card about working through things would make me forget his thumbs up when his mother rated me a 4 out of 10 during my miscarriage. I called the front desk. "Do you know any local nursing homes that might appreciate a flower delivery?" The clerk gave me a number. Within the hour, I'd arranged for them to pick up the arrangement. But first, I took a photo, making sure the card was clearly visible. An hour later, Kevin texted, "Did you get my gift?" I replied with the photo. 3 elderly residents, beaming, sitting around his extravagant flowers at the nursing home. My message: the flowers are beautiful. I'm sure the people who are enjoying them really appreciate the gesture. His response? A single question mark. He clearly hadn't expected me to give them away to strangers. He thought expensive flowers would make me emotional, vulnerable, willing to talk. Not this. Then my phone started buzzing, this time with messages from friends I hadn't heard from in weeks. Kevin, it turned out, had been reaching out to our mutual friends, spinning his version of events. I'd supposedly left him without warning over a family disagreement, and he just couldn't understand why I was being so extreme. I read through their concerned messages, asking if I was okay if we could talk. He was trying to control the narrative to get his story out there before I could tell mine. So, for the next hour, I forwarded. I didn't send everything. Some of it was too raw, too painful, but I sent enough. Enough for them to see Linda's cruelty and Kevin's complicity. The responses started pouring in within minutes. Shock, outrage, anger on my behalf. One friend texted back, all caps, "I can't believe Kevin's family did this. I'm so sorry I didn't see what was happening." My friend Jessica called me directly, her voice already upset before she even said hello. She admitted she'd always thought Linda was cold towards me, but had dismissed it as normal mother-in-law stuff, the kind of tension common in families. She'd noticed the small, critical comments about my cooking, my clothes, but figured it was just Linda being Linda, and that I knew how to handle it. Jessica told me she felt terrible for not saying anything, for not asking if I was okay. Her voice grew shaky, on the verge of tears. Another friend, Rachel, not Kevin's ex, a different Rachel from work, sent a long message. She'd noticed, she wrote, how Kevin never stood up for me when his family made little digs. At parties, at dinners, a comment about my job, my appearance, and Kevin would just change the subject. Never defend. Rachel hadn't realized it was part of a larger pattern of him letting his family abuse me. But now, seeing the spreadsheet, she understood why I left. Their validation. It helped more than I could have imagined. For 3 years, I'd wondered if I was too sensitive, if I was trying too hard for approval, if I should have just brushed it off like Kevin always said. Hearing my friends confirm that this was genuinely awful, that it wasn't something I should have had to endure, it made me trust my own judgment again. I wasn't crazy for being hurt. I wasn't overreacting by leaving. What Kevin and his family did was cruel. It was wrong, and I was right to protect myself to get out. 2 weeks crawled by, spent at the hotel, deliberately avoiding Kevin's entire family. Then Lawrence called. Tuesday afternoon. Kevin's attorney had contacted him with a settlement offer. Kevin would agree to a quick divorce, a fair split of assets, if I signed a non-disclosure agreement. About the spreadsheet, about the family dynamics. Lawrence read me the exact chilling language. I could never talk about what happened, publicly or privately, and if I did, I'd owe Kevin a huge amount in damages. My stomach churned. It showed me just how desperate Kevin was to bury this. He didn't want to fix anything. He didn't want to apologize for participating in years of abuse. He wanted to buy my silence, to pretend it never happened, to keep his reputation spotless. The next day, I met with Lawrence. The NDA request, he told me, shows Kevin knows exactly how bad this looks. Kevin understood. If people found out about the spreadsheet, about his thumbs up during my miscarriage, he'd be seen for what he truly was, a man who let his family abuse his wife for years, without ever defending her. Lawrence explained Kevin's fear, how it would affect his job, his social life, his future relationships. I refuse, I told Lawrence. I will not sign any non-disclosure agreement. I am not going to protect people who spent 3 years treating me like a project they could grade and criticize. If Kevin wanted privacy, he should have thought of that before he participated in rating his wife like a product review. That afternoon, we crafted our counteroffer. I would keep the house. It was mine, after all, the deed solely in my name, the down payment entirely from my premarital savings. We proposed a fair division of other assets, but absolutely, unequivocally, no non-disclosure agreement. Kevin could have his privacy if he agreed to my terms and stopped contacting me directly, but I would not be silenced. Lawrence sent the counteroffer before I even left his office. He expected a swift response. Kevin, apparently, was highly motivated to settle quickly. Kevin, it turned out, did not take the counteroffer well. 3 days later, I woke up to a text sent at 2 a.m. Paragraphs of angry accusations. I was vindictive, he claimed, trying to punish him for his mother's behavior. He had never personally done anything to hurt me, he insisted. I was destroying his life over things other people said. He whined about how unfair I was being, how I was using the divorce for revenge instead of working things out like adults. I read through it, feeling a profound, almost eerie calm. Then I screenshotted the entire tirade and sent it to Lawrence. More evidence, I thought, that Kevin still didn't understand his own participation in the abuse. He saw himself as innocent because he hadn't created the spreadsheet. But he was in that group chat for 3 years. Never once defended me. Never told them to stop. And his thumbs up on the post about my miscarriage? That wasn't his mother's behavior. That was his choice. No amount of late-night texts could change that cold, hard fact. I forwarded Lawrence another screenshot, adding a note. Does this count as harassment? His response came back in 10 minutes. Absolutely. We can use it if he keeps pushing. The next few days were quiet. I stopped obsessively checking my phone, started forcing myself to focus on what came next. On Thursday, Phoebe texted, casually asking if I wanted to meet for lunch on Saturday. The sheer normalcy of the invitation made me feel more human than I had in weeks. I agreed. She sent me the address of a downtown restaurant I'd never been to. Saturday afternoon, I walked in and spotted Phoebe immediately, at a corner table bathed in sunlight. The hostess greeted her by name, telling me Phoebe was a regular. We hugged briefly, sat down, and Phoebe, without even glancing at the menu, ordered a bottle of wine. The server brought it over, and Phoebe poured, raising her glass. To new beginnings, she toasted. I drank to that. It felt profoundly true. We ordered salads, and Phoebe asked how I was holding up. Honestly, I told her. Some days were incredibly hard. But I knew deep down I'd made the right choice. She nodded. She'd been thinking a lot about Linda since getting my email, remembering countless little things she'd brushed off over the years that now seemed terrifyingly significant. Phoebe began telling me stories, going all the way back to their college days. Linda always had to be the best, always had to be the center. She couldn't stand when other women got attention or praise. There was a girl who got engaged junior year, and Linda spent months making snide comments about the tiny ring and the guy who probably couldn't afford better. Another friend got into medical school, and Linda suddenly decided she wanted to be a doctor, too, a notion she dropped the moment she didn't get accepted anywhere. Linda, Phoebe concluded, has spent her entire adult life competing with women, instead of supporting them, always finding ways to tear others down to feel superior. She described Linda's pattern, befriending women, then slowly, insidiously undermining them with criticism disguised as helpful advice. A friend who gained weight after having a baby, Linda constantly buying her clothes in smaller sizes as motivation, making the woman feel terrible. Another friend whose husband left, Linda making cutting remarks about how she should have tried harder to keep him happy, implying the divorce was somehow her fault. Listening to these stories, a profound peace settled over me. Nothing I did would have ever made a difference with Linda. She didn't want a good enough daughter-in-law. She wanted control over Kevin, and she couldn't stand that he'd chosen someone she hadn't picked. Linda saw you as competition for Kevin's attention from the very beginning, Phoebe explained. And the spreadsheet was her way of keeping you feeling small and grateful for their acceptance. The ratings weren't about improving you. They were about making sure you never felt secure enough to challenge Linda's position as the most important woman in Kevin's life. Phoebe reached across the table, squeezing my hand. "I'm sorry," she said softly. "I didn't see what was happening sooner. Didn't do something to stop it." "It's not your fault," I told her, truly meaning it. "I'm just glad to finally understand. The problem was never me." We finished lunch, and Phoebe confirmed she was officially done with Linda. She told me several other women in their social circle felt the same. Linda was finding herself uninvited to events, suddenly shunned. A small sense of justice bloomed in my chest, knowing Linda was finally facing real consequences for her cruelty. But mostly I felt relief. Profound, aching relief to be away from all of it. Phoebe and I exchanged numbers, promising to stay in touch. Walking back to my car, I felt lighter than I had in days. It was a weight lifted. 3 weeks turned into a monotonous blur of hotel living, work, and just going through the motions. The room was comfortable, but the cost was astronomical. I knew I needed my own space, a real home, not just temporary housing. I started scanning apartment listings online during lunch after work. Most of them looked generic, cold in the photos, just empty rooms that could belong to anyone. Then I saw it. A one-bedroom with huge windows, hardwood floors, looking warm and bright even in the pictures. I called the number. The agent answered, offering to show me that afternoon. I met her outside a building in a neighborhood I'd always secretly loved, but Kevin had dismissed as too far from his parents. She unlocked the door, we walked up to the second floor, and when she opened the apartment door, something shifted in my chest. Sunlight flooded the space, creating dancing patterns on the floor. The whole apartment felt open, peaceful. The agent launched into her standard spiel about square footage and amenities, but I barely heard her. I was already picturing my furniture here, my books on those shelves, my life unfolding in this space. I walked through the bedroom, the small kitchen. Everything felt profoundly right in a way our house never had. This apartment is mine, not ours. Not decorated to impress anyone, just a space where I could simply be myself, without judgment, without criticism. "I want it," I told the agent. She looked surprised by my quick decision, started to suggest I think it over, compare other options. I cut her off. "I've done enough thinking," I said, my voice firm. "I know this is the right place." That afternoon, back at her office, I filled out the application, wrote the check for the deposit and first month's rent. She assured me everything would go through quickly, given my good income and references. I left her office feeling a surge of excitement I hadn't felt in months. like I was finally building something that truly belonged to me. 2 days later, the approval came through. I signed the lease immediately. The agent handed me the keys. I stood in my empty apartment holding them, feeling the immense weight of this decision, this new beginning. I called a moving company, scheduling them to retrieve my things from the house. Lawrence, ever efficient, sent Kevin's attorney official notice about the moving date. I didn't want another scene on the front porch, another desperate attempt to convince me to stay. Kevin's attorney responded, confirming Kevin wouldn't be present. The relief that washed over me was immense, more than I'd anticipated. Moving day arrived. I met the movers at the house, key in hand. Kevin was nowhere in sight, true to his attorney's word. I walked through our home one last time, a final sweep, gathering only what was mine. My clothes, my books, my kitchen items, the furniture I'd brought into the marriage. Kevin's things remained exactly where they were. This wasn't about spite or revenge. It was about taking what belonged to me and leaving the rest behind. Loading the truck took 3 hours. Then I followed them to my new apartment, watching as they carefully unloaded everything into my space. Setting up the apartment became my sanctuary. It took the rest of the week, slow, deliberate choices guiding every placement. I bought a couch I actually liked, not the neutral beige one Linda had deemed most appropriate for a married couple. I hung art that made me happy, instead of the generic landscape prints Kevin's mother gave us as a wedding gift. I arranged my kitchen precisely how I wanted it, free from worries about correct dish displays or towel folds. Every choice was solely mine. And slowly, beautifully, the apartment began to feel like a true reflection of who I actually was, not who I had been desperately trying to be. I was hanging curtains in the bedroom, a simple, satisfying task when a knock came at my door. I wasn't expecting anyone. My stomach dropped. I had a terrible feeling. Through the peephole I saw him, Kevin, standing in the hallway, holding a poster board. I couldn't believe it. He'd tracked down my new address from the movers, or perhaps he'd followed the truck. Either way, he was here, and he was holding what looked like a homemade sign. I didn't open the door. "What do you want, Kevin?" I called out, my voice tight. His muffled voice came back. He needed to talk. He wasn't leaving until I heard him out. I unlocked the deadbolt, but kept the chain on, opening the door just a crack. Kevin held up his poster board. On it, a list of numbered reasons, 1 through 10, why we should stay together. Like something out of a bad, romantic comedy, not the devastating end of a marriage built on lies and cruelty. He started reading them aloud. His voice cracked on number 3, about how we promised forever, and he still believed in that promise. I let him finish. Interrupting would just prolong it. When he was done, he looked at me, tears welling in his eyes. "Can we please talk inside?" Through the crack in the door, I told him, "Kevin, I saw 3 years of messages in that group chat. 3 years of your family rating me, criticizing me, tearing me apart. And not once, not one time, did you defend me, or tell them to stop." His ridiculous poster board didn't erase the fact that he gave a thumbs-up emoji when his mother mocked my grief during my miscarriage. "No grand gesture," I said, "no list of reasons can fix that level of betrayal. I'm done trying to make him understand something he should have known all along." His face crumbled. "I didn't think the spreadsheet was that big of a deal," he mumbled. "It was just Mom being Mom. I didn't want to cause family drama." "That," I told him, "is exactly the problem, Kevin. You chose avoiding drama with your family over protecting your wife. And you did it for 3 years, without ever questioning if maybe your mom was wrong." "We're done," I said. "You need to leave." And I closed the door while he's still trying to argue. He stands outside for another few minutes. I could hear him crying. Then, finally, his footsteps faded down the hall. Through the peephole, he was gone. But he'd left the poster board leaning against my door, like sad, pathetic trash. I waited 5 minutes, just to be sure. Then I opened the door, picked up the poster board, and threw it into the building's dumpster on my way back upstairs. For weeks after I'd walked out, Kevin and I met for divorce mediation at Lawrence's office. I was already seated at the conference table when Kevin and his attorney walked in. Seeing him across the table felt surreal. He looked so different from the man I married. Gaunt, his clothes hanging loose, dark circles under his eyes. He looked older, tired. A tiny, fleeting part of me felt a pang of pity, but a much larger part remembered that thumbs-up emoji. And I felt only a deep sadness for all the time I'd wasted, desperately trying to be enough for people who were always determined I never would be. Lawrence calmly walked us through the settlement agreement. I watched Kevin's attorney lean over, whispering something in his ear. Kevin nodded, his shoulders slumping, as if he was finally, truly accepting this was happening. The agreement split everything down the middle except for the house, which of course stayed with me. My down payment, my mortgage contributions. Kevin got his car, his personal belongings. I kept my retirement accounts. The savings were divided evenly, despite my larger contributions. His attorney slid the papers across the table. Kevin signed without argument, a clear sign he'd been told to take the deal and move on. The whole process took less than an hour. It felt almost too easy. After everything, like 3 years of marriage, even one built on such insidious lies, shouldn't dissolve so quickly. We gathered our things. Lawrence shook my hand, assuring me he'd file everything that day. Kevin stood by the door, looking lost, diminished. He waited until Lawrence and his attorney left the room. Then he turned to me. "Can we talk for just a minute?" he asked. I almost said no, but something in his face. I stopped. "5 minutes, Kevin," I said. We sat back down at the conference table. 3 feet of polished with now a vast, emotional chasm between us. He started talking, his voice cracking. He was sorry. He didn't realize how much the spreadsheet would hurt me. As he spoke, I noticed it. His apology wasn't about the 3 years of relentless cruelty. It was about getting caught. It was about how he felt bad now, not about that thumbs-up emoji during my miscarriage. "I thought it was just Mom being Mom," he mumbled. "I didn't want to cause family drama." And just like that, the stark truth hit me again. He still didn't actually understand what he'd done wrong. When he finished, I took a deep breath. "Kevin," I said, "I hope you figure out why your actions were so hurtful. But that's work you need to do on your own. Without me." I told him we were done. I was moving forward with my life. And I genuinely wished him well, even though, in truth, I never wanted to see him again. His eyes filled with tears. But I stood up. I walked out before he could say another word. I had said everything I needed to say. Staying longer wouldn't change a thing. The divorce was finalized 6 weeks after I walked out. It felt surprisingly fast, but it made sense. No kids, a quick settlement. Lawrence called me on a Thursday afternoon. "The judge signed the papers," he said. "It's officially over." I went to his office, picked up my copies. Signing my name on those final documents, it wasn't sad, not really. It felt more like closing a chapter on a version of myself who hadn't known her own worth. I drove home to my apartment, poured a glass of wine, sat on my couch, looking at the divorce decree with my name on it. 3 years of marriage, reduced to sterile legal paperwork declaring us strangers. And the strangest part? How incredibly lighter I felt. 2 days later, Kalani texted me again. "Linda wants to reach out," she wrote. "She wants to meet to discuss everything." I stared at the message for a long time. Then I typed my response carefully. I appreciated Kalani trying to bridge things, I told her, but I had no interest in a relationship with Linda. I hoped she understood. Some damage just can't be repaired. A meeting wouldn't change 3 years of documented cruelty or how I felt about it. Kalani responded instantly. She got it, she said. And then something surprising. She'd actually been in therapy, dealing with her own issues with Linda's controlling behavior, working through years of feeling like nothing she did was ever good enough. We texted back and forth for a while, and a strange connection formed. Both of us trying to untangle ourselves from Linda's insidious need to control and criticize. We agreed to maybe get coffee sometime, as individuals, not as family. It felt like the healthiest boundary I could possibly offer. 2 months after leaving Kevin, I downloaded a dating app, stared at my phone for 20 minutes before actually creating a profile. Dating felt completely different this time. I was approaching it with razor-sharp boundaries and a much clearer understanding of what I actually needed. I wasn't trying to prove anything. I wasn't trying to win anyone over. Just looking for genuine compatibility, mutual respect. My first few dates were fine. Nothing special. And crucially, I didn't feel desperate to make something work, just because I was newly single. I went out with one guy who talked about himself for 90 minutes straight. I left that date knowing with absolute certainty I would rather have stayed in my terrible marriage than settle for that kind of self-absorption again. Another guy seemed nice, but lived with his parents at 35 with no plans to move out. I politely declined a second date, without a shred of guilt about my new, higher standards. My friends, those incredible women, threw me a divorce party on a Saturday night. Really, it was just an excuse to celebrate me. To celebrate choosing myself over a toxic situation. We drank wine in my apartment. Someone brought a cake decorated with "Free at Last" in purple frosting. We laughed about Kevin's pathetic poster board, how he actually thought numbered reasons could erase 3 years of documented cruelty. I felt surrounded by people who genuinely valued me for who I was. One friend raised a toast to new beginnings, and everyone clinked glasses. I realized in that moment these women had been supporting me all along, even when I couldn't see how bad things truly were. We stayed up late, sharing stories of bad relationships we'd left, the lessons we'd learned. I went to bed that night feeling a profound gratitude for the people who had stayed, even when things got hard. 3 months after the divorce, I listed the house for sale. Keeping it felt like clinging to too many memories of desperately trying to be someone I wasn't. The real estate agent assured me the market was good, expected multiple offers. She was right. 3 bids came in within a week. I accepted the highest, signing the papers not with sadness, but with immense relief. Relief that I could finally, truly move on. The profit from the sale gave me a solid financial foundation I'd never had before. I started looking for a smaller place, entirely mine. No ghosts of failed approval seeking. I found a charming townhouse with big windows, a small yard. Put down a deposit the very same day. Moving was swift. I hired movers to pack everything. I stood in the empty living room one last time, watching them load boxes into the truck. The house looked bigger without furniture. And I remembered all the hours I'd spent arranging things, choosing neutral colors, safe decorations, all to impress Linda, all to earn her fleeting approval. I locked the door behind me, handed the keys to my agent, and drove away. I didn't look back. Not once. Work, blessedly, became easier. I was no longer dragging the suffocating stress of my failing marriage into the office every day. I noticed a profound change. More focused in meetings, more confident presenting ideas. It was like I was finally operating at full capacity instead of always running on half power. My boss even commented, "You seem different lately in a good way. More assertive, more engaged." She assigned me to lead a major account, one I'd wanted for months. I accepted, knowing I'd earned it through my actual work, not by desperately trying to prove myself to people who would never truly value me. The project kicked off, and I threw myself into it, staying late some nights because I wanted to, not because I was avoiding going home. My team responded incredibly well to my leadership. We hit our first deadline ahead of schedule. I felt like I was finally thriving, free from the constant criticism and judgment that had once followed me everywhere. The next week, Phoebe called, inviting me to her book club meeting on Thursday night. I said yes, even though I hadn't been to a book club since college. The meeting was at someone's house, warm, inviting, with big windows and comfortable furniture. When I walked in, Everyone smiled at me, a genuine welcome. We talked about the book for maybe 20 minutes before the conversation naturally shifted to life, work, families. And here's the thing, nobody asked invasive questions. Nobody made subtle digs about my choices. One woman spoke openly about her recent divorce. Another shared struggles with setting boundaries with her parents. And I realized these were people who supported each other, who lifted each other up instead of tearing each other down. Phoebe introduced me simply as her friend, not Kevin's ex-wife, not Linda's former daughter-in-law. That simple introduction, it made me feel like a real person, not someone's disappointing project. After the meeting, 3 women gave me their numbers, suggesting coffee. And they meant it. It felt genuine, not obligatory. I drove home, feeling lighter than I had in years. Like I'd finally found what normal, healthy friendships actually looked like after spending so long trapped in Linda's toxic circle. 3 months flew by. I was at the grocery store on a Saturday morning in the produce section when I spotted Cecilia, Kevin's cousin. She saw me. Instantly, she feigned intense interest in a pile of apples, turning her back as if she could magically become invisible. I grabbed my cart, rolled it right up to her aisle, and chirped a cheerful, "Hello, Cecilia!" She froze. She turned, her face bright red, a forced, fake smile plastered on. She mumbled something about how nice it was to see me, but wouldn't meet my eyes. I asked how she'd been. She stammered through a generic response about being busy, her hands visibly shaking as she picked up apples. The whole agonizing interaction lasted maybe 2 minutes before she blurted an excuse about forgetting something in another aisle and practically ran away, abandoning her cart. Watching her squirm, her humiliation palpable, gave me a strange sense of closure I hadn't realized I needed. It was proof that actions have consequences, that people who participate in cruelty don't get to simply pretend it never happened. I finished my shopping, a quiet satisfaction settling over me. I'd handled it with more grace than she deserved, simply by being polite and refusing to let her hide from what she'd done. A week later, I got a text from Miranda, asking if we could talk. I almost deleted it, but curiosity surprisingly won. She sent a long message, apologizing for the comments she'd made about my weight in the group chat. She explained that her teenage daughter had recently started asking questions about body image, and hearing her daughter worry about being judged had made her realize the harm of the casual cruelty she had participated in. She was ashamed, she wrote, of how she'd treated me. Her apology felt genuine, but it was also clearly prompted by her own personal situation. It took her daughter's pain to make her understand that words actually hurt. She didn't make excuses or try to minimize anything. She simply said she was wrong, she was sorry, and hoped I could forgive her someday. I read the message 3 times, trying to decipher my own feelings. I settled on a mix of appreciation for the apology and a deep sadness that it took her daughter's pain to make her see mine. I let the message sit for a day, wanting to ensure my response was authentic, not just polite. I texted Miranda back, thanking her for the apology and for taking responsibility. But I explained that I needed space from everyone connected to Kevin right now. What his family did hurt too much. I wasn't ready to have any of them in my life while I was trying to heal and move forward. She responded quickly, saying she understood completely and was grateful for my grace. I believed she meant it, even if a part of me thought grace was far more than she'd ever shown me. I didn't feel angry anymore, just tired. Tired of carrying the weight of other people's cruelty. Accepting her apology without offering reconciliation felt like the right, necessary balance. I blocked her number after our exchange. I didn't want to leave any doors open for future contact. And I moved on, knowing I had handled it with more maturity than anyone in that family had shown me during 3 years of marriage. My life settled into a rhythm that felt comfortable, finally, instead of constantly stressful. I had work projects I genuinely enjoyed, and friends who actually wanted to spend time with me. I even started a pottery class on Wednesday nights just because it sounded fun. And I'm terrible at making bowls, truly awful, but here's the amazing part. Nobody's grading my work. Nobody's telling me I should try harder. The instructor is patient, encouraging. The other students just laugh when their clay collapses, instead of treating mistakes like personal failures. I made a lopsided mug. It looks ridiculous, but it holds coffee, and I use it every single morning. Because it represents doing something purely for my own enjoyment, without anyone's approval. My weekends are now packed with brunches, movie nights, hiking trips with friends from work, and Phoebe's book club. I realized I was building a social life based on mutual respect, not toxic family obligation. I went on a few more dates from the apps. Some were good, some were incredibly boring. But I never felt that desperate need to make something work just because I was newly single. That guy who talked about himself for 90 minutes? I left knowing with profound clarity I would never ever settle for that kind of one-sided attention again. The other nice guy who lived with his parents at 35 with no plans to move out? I was picky now. I'd learned, the hard way, what happens when you ignore red flags just to avoid being alone. 6 months after I discovered that spreadsheet, I woke up on a Saturday morning, and I realized I was genuinely, truly happy, in a way I never, ever was during my marriage. I have friends now who celebrate my successes, instead of finding insidious ways to diminish them. My boss just promoted me to senior account manager because my work has been consistently excellent. My apartment feels like home, not a stage where I'm constantly performing for an invisible, judgmental audience. It's decorated with things I actually like, not neutral choices designed to avoid criticism. My evenings are spent reading, cooking, talking with friends, instead of anxiously waiting for Kevin to come home and report what his mother said about me that day. My bank account is healthier because I'm not pouring money into gifts and gestures meant to win approval from people who were never going to give it. I look at myself in the mirror and I see someone rested. Content, not the exhausted woman who was trying so desperately hard to be enough for a family that had already decided she never would be. That spreadsheet, it destroyed my marriage. Yes, but it also freed me. Freed me from a life where my worth was measured in weekly scores and critical comments. And I am so profoundly grateful I found it before I wasted even more years trying to earn love that was never truly available. Then, at a friend's birthday party in July, I met someone new. He made me laugh within the first 5 minutes. His name was Joshua, environmental consulting, and he asked me questions about my life like he was genuinely, truly interested in the answers. We talked for an hour about everything from favorite books to worst vacation disasters. He didn't interrupt. He didn't turn every topic back to himself. He asked if he could take me to dinner the following week. I said yes, cautiously optimistic, but not desperate for it to work out. Our first date stretched to 3 hours at an Italian restaurant. We shared pasta, talked about our families, and I never once felt judged for my divorce. Joshua even shared about his own failed engagement 2 years ago, how he'd learned to recognize when someone's words don't match their actions. I felt seen, truly seen, in a way I never had with Kevin. We started seeing each other regularly. He treated me with consistent kindness, consistent respect. He showed up when he said he would. He meant the things he promised. It's still early. I'm taking it slow. I know what happens when you rush. But the difference between this and my marriage? It's so stark, it's almost funny. Joshua asks about my day, and he actually listens to the answer. He never makes me feel like I need to shrink myself or hide any part of who I am, just to make him comfortable. Looking back now, that spreadsheet was both the worst and the absolute best thing that ever happened to me. It ripped open the ugly truth I'd been blindly avoiding for 3 years. I was married to a man who watched his family tear me apart, piece by piece, and never said a single word to stop them. A man who gave a casual thumbs up when his mother mocked my grief over losing our baby. I spent so much energy, so much of myself, trying to be the wife Linda wanted, instead of just being myself. Changing my clothes, my hobbies, even my personality, all to earn an approval that was never, ever coming. Finding that spreadsheet, it hurt worse than anything I've ever experienced. But it freed me. Freed me from a life where my worth was constantly determined by someone else's cruel rating system. I'm building a life now where I'm valued for who I actually am, not scored on who someone else wanted me to be. I'm surrounded by people who celebrate me, who lift me up, instead of constantly tearing me down. My career is thriving because I'm no longer carrying the suffocating weight of a failing marriage into every meeting. My friendships are deeper, more genuine, because I finally have the energy to invest in people who actually care about me. I wake up every morning in my own beautiful apartment without dreading the day ahead. And I go to bed at night without replaying every interaction, dissecting it to figure out what I did wrong. I've never felt more free, more myself, than I do right now. 6 months ago, I left my wedding ring on a kitchen counter, and I walked away from people who spent 3 years proving they would never truly see me. Have you ever experienced a moment of betrayal so shocking it fundamentally changed your life? I'd love to hear your thoughts, or if you've faced anything even remotely similar. Let me know in the comments below.